Alright there YouTube, so earlier this week Apple updated the MacBook and I wanted to give you an overview of the changes and some of my thoughts on where the MacBook stands in 2016. So Apple have upgraded the internals of the MacBook. It now starts with a 1.1 GHz Core M3 processor for the base model. There is also the next model up that has the 1.2 GHz Core M5. And there is a build-to-order option of a 1.3 GHz Core M7. Now these turbo boost to 2.2 GHz, 2.7 GHz and 3.1 GHz respectively. Apple has also updated the RAM inside the MacBook, so you have 8 GB as before, but it is now clocked at 1866 MHz, which is an improvement over the 1600 MHz of last year's model. They've also increased the speed of the SSD inside the notebook, but you still have 256 gigs as the starting option, and in the next model up you have 512 GB of that SSD storage. The graphics have also had an update. It's now Intel HD 515 graphics. And that's pretty much it for the internals. There's no changes to the number of ports. There's no real changes to anything cosmetically. However, Apple did add the rose gold color to the lineup. So you can now buy it in space gray, gold, silver and rose gold, depending on your preference. And that's really it for the internals of the notebook. Now, things that didn't change. Apple still has the 480p FaceTime web camera in the MacBook. Last year it was a very disappointing camera, and this year it's incredibly disappointing yet again. It baffled me why there was a 480p in the first place. I just think it's crazy that there's still a 480p camera in it. That being said, if you're not bothered about video calling, then it doesn't matter anyway. But if you do like to do video calls, then it's actually really functional, is about all I can say about the camera, and it's nothing spectacular. I would have liked to have seen at least a 720p camera, ideally a 1080p, but 720 would have been good. Anyway, the prices exactly the same. It starts at £1,049 for the 1.1 GHz Core M3. And that goes up to £1,299 for the 1.2 GHz Core M5 model. That comes with your 512 gigs of storage space. There's no difference, there's no way to configure any extra RAM. It's 8 GB, whichever you go for, and there's no additional purchases on top of that. So where does the MacBook stand in 2016? Well, honestly, I still like it as a notebook. I think it has its merits. It's supremely portable. It still has a glorious 12-inch Retina display. It's incredibly light. Now the new models have an extra hour of battery life according to Apple, and honestly most of Apple's battery benchmarks seem to be pretty accurate across all of their devices, so I have no reason to disbelieve that. But overall, it's a spec bump update. I've seen reports across the web saying that it's a disappointing update. I'm not so sure disappointing is the right words. For me, it was entirely expected. Apple spent so long last year talking about the design and the technologies they poured into this notebook. There was no way that there was going to be a major overhaul. Spec bumps was pretty much all we could see. It's a shame that the price hasn't come down even just a little bit. Even if they just knocked £50 off it, it would have been nice to have seen the price starting to fall on this particular notebook. It's a very low powered device. That's not to say it can't perform, because it can, but it's not the same class of processor as you'd find in an Ultrabook or in something like the MacBook Pro. It's a very, very low powered processor, and it's got a good bit of processing grunt behind it. Early benchmarks for this year's model are showing between a 15 and 18% increase in performance over last year's model, which is great to see. And honestly, that's really it. It's still a pretty solid laptop for what it is, which honestly is down to if it can fit into your workflow. It still has just one USB Type-C port on it and your 3.5mm headphone jack. Now, in a world where we have wireless printers, wireless storage, wireless scanners, Wi-Fi in our cameras for transferring photographs, the need to actually physically connect devices is diminishing rapidly. That being said, there are a lot of people who need to use some form of physically connected device, and myself, I do use mass storage on a physical connection basis. So if you need to connect peripherals, it's probably not the notebook for you, because you need to buy the adapter for it, which is not cheap. So you probably might want to steer clear of this. But if you don't need to connect lots of peripherals, if you want something that's ultra portable, ultra light, and will give you great battery life, then actually it's a pretty solid laptop to buy. It's not cheap at £1,049, and if you can take just a little bit of a hit on the portability, I personally think the 13-inch MacBook Pro with Retina display is probably the best computer that Apple does right now. It's still very portable. It's got ports along both sides of all different types, and you still get a great Retina display in it, and you get plenty of performance, and it still gives you good battery life as well. But that's really it. I would say if it's something that fits into your workflow, then it's probably worth taking a look at the MacBook now it's been updated. If it's not something that will fit into your workflow easily, then you might want to be looking elsewhere at other notebooks. Anyway, that's it from me for now. That's my thoughts on the 2016 MacBook. And don't forget to check back soon for the next video. Leave a comment below, let me know what you thought. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.